Hey, good evening, and welcome back to Everyday Talk 24/7. It's Monday, October 7th, and tonight it's less than 10 days from when Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida and then on up into North Carolina, and devastation is there. And now, less than 10 days later, we are dealing with another storm. The folks in Florida, or the west coast of Florida. Hurricane Milton. One of the strongest storms ever to be in the Atlantic Basin. As I speak now, 180 miles an hour, sustained winds, possibly more by the time it gets going. That will probably decrease by the time it makes landfall, but this is a massive, powerful storm, capable of bringing destruction on the scale that Helene did. And it's the question that probably we ask, what does this mean? Another hurricane, what are we to make of it? God is telling us in very clear terms that He is the Lord of the wind and the waves. He wants us to recognize that. In the book of Job, he struggled with the hard things that were happening to him. Not even things that were directly his fault, but he still struggled with the impact of it. And finally, after getting some horrible advice from three supposed friends, this character, Eliyahu, begins to make truth, begins to teach Job truth. And then in the end of Job, the last few chapters, Job responds to the voice of God. But listen to what's being said here about the weather. Reading from Job chapter 36, I'm going to read from chapter 36, 27 through chapter 37, verse 5. I'm just going to read this and make some comments. He, meaning God, draws up the drops of water, which distill as rain to the streams. The clouds pour down their moisture, and abundant showers fall on mankind. Who can understand how He spreads out the clouds, how He thunders from His pavilion? We can't grasp how and the power that's there. Just like the power of Helene, which actually was a bigger storm, a more powerful storm, and caused more death than Hurricane Katrina. Now Milton is raging as well. Who can understand? We don't know that kind of power. That's what God is trying to teach us. We don't know that kind of power. How He thunders from His pavilion. See how He scatters His lightning about Him, bathing the depths of the sea. This is how He governs the nations and provides food in abundance. Do you see what He's saying here? These storms are evidence of God's governing power and control over the nations. So we can learn that much, at least. He fills His hands with lightning, God, and commands it to strike its mark. His thunder announces the coming storm. Even the cattle make known its approach. In other words, the animals, the cattle, are aware of the approaching power of the storm. And then chapter 37, verse 1. At this my heart pounds and leaps from its place. And when you see the power, the devastation, the energy from these storms, particularly now that we're looking at Helene and Michael, our heart does pound, both with awe and fear. Because that's what God is powerful God. Listen to the roar of His voice, to the rumbling that comes from His mouth. He unleashes His lightning beneath the whole heaven, and He sends it to the ends of the earth. After that comes the sound of His roar. He thunders with His majestic voice. When His voice resounds, He holds nothing back. God's voice thunders in marvelous ways. He does great things beyond our understanding. You know, I was reminded as the winds probably didn't quite make it but approached hurricane force where I lived on Friday morning, I heard that wind. It reminded me of growing up in Miami and going through storms, hurricanes, where you hear that relentless wind. Listen to the roar of his voice, to the rumbling that comes from his mouth. After that comes the sound of his roar. Folks in Florida, my area, even more in North Carolina, and now the folks in the west coast of Florida are going to hear this rumbling, this roar of God's voice. That's what we must take away from this. This is the voice and the power of God, reminding us of his great power, of his great strength. This is what this book tells us. We are seeing just this tiny demonstration of the power of God that impacts millions and millions of lives. What are we to make of this? That God, indeed, is Lord of the wind and the waves. He is the great, powerful, sovereign God. He does control lives. We are accountable to him. We must be humble before him. We must not be afraid of the word repent. We need to have this awe and wonder and fear. Pray for God's care for these people tonight and tomorrow and for the people in North Carolina. But pray for our nation, that we would see that we're not in control of our own fate, but rather the Lord of the wind and the waves, the Lord of Helene, the Lord of Milton, is the one that we must learn from. What is all this about? It is about the power and majesty of God. And will we accept it, or will we keep turning from it? That's the thought for this night. I love your interaction, your feedback. This is important for us. God is not random. He wants us to learn about his majesty and power from these two great storms. Look forward to talking to you soon. Lord willing, tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Good night.